Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and I have a fantastic game for you played by legendary Alexander Alekhine. His opponent is English chess master Frederick Yates, and this game was played in 1922 in London. Now let's see what happened on the board. Alekhine had white pieces and he started the game with d4, knight f6 by Yates, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3. The game transformed into Queen's Gambit declined, 3 knights variation, bishop e7, bishop g5, black castles kingside, e3, knight d7, rook c1. Of course, all this is a standard stuff seen many times, queen c2 and rook e8. According to Alekhine, this move is inferior to a6 because after bishop d3, black can no longer transpose into the system of defense that offers the best chances. The idea of a6 is to go for d takes c4 and then b5 c5, but in the game we see rook e8. Now comes bishop d3, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, knight d5 and knight e4. Well, instead of playing knight e4, the right move here was bishop takes e7. It should be noticed that in the variation with knight e4, black can give a check from a5 square, and in the end of the day, after queen d2, bishop b4, knight c3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, the position of the rook on e8 square is rather an advantage for black because black can go for e5. But in the game after knight d5, instead of bishop takes e7, Alekhine played knight e4 and f5, which is a terrible move. This is actually the worst move which is possible to make, quite apart from the fact that it in no way obstructs white's castling. It also yields the splendid square e5 to the enemy knight without the slightest compensation. From this point, black's game may be considered strategically lost. Now comes bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, knight d2 and b5. This move, which aims at the liberation of the useless c8 bishop, is worse than the disadvantages that it seeks to mitigate, for white will now seize control of the c file and especially c5 square, which black has just given up. Bishop takes d5, c takes d5, and Alekhine castled kingside. White's next moves are based upon simple but indisputable logic. By occupying the square c5 with one of his knights, he will force its exchange against the opposing knight, after which he will be able to settle his other knight on the same square without fear of interference. a5, knight b3, a4. Meanwhile, Yates is advancing on the queen side, but of course black can create no problems for white. Now comes knight c5, knight takes c5, queen takes c5, queen takes c5, and rook takes c5. Now black is entirely at the mercy of his opponent, who will be free to choose the best road to victory. b4, rook c1, bishop a6, knight e5. White's position is simply awesome. If we have a look at the position, white knight arrives at the right moment, and now white is not allowing black to offer an exchange of rooks. For example, right now if I move like rook c8, then after the exchange of rooks on c8 square, white has this devastating knight c6 move with double threats. If bishop a6, then knight takes b4, and this is going to be an easy win for white. That's why in the game after knight e5, black played rook b8. f3, white wants to centralize his king. This is what you should do in the endgame. b3, a3, h6, king f2, king h7, h4, rook f8. Meanwhile, black is making waiting moves, king g3. You may ask, but where is this king going? But it turns out that Alekhine has prepared a long journey for his white king, rook b8. Well, instead of rook b8, if you move like g5 in Yates style, then of course white can capture on g5 and then rook h1 check, and then the second rook is coming. The game is simply over. That's why after king g3, black played rook b8, because moving his pawn from g7 square weakens his 7th rank too much. Rook c7, bishop b5, rook c5. Meanwhile, white is just intensifying the pressure, making his position better. Rook c6, both rooks will now stick to e6 and a6 squares, king f4, king g8 and h5, forcing the final maneuver for whose success it is essential to prevent black's king from emerging at g6 after knight d7, bishop f1, the pawn is under attack, g3, bishop a6, rook f7. Alekhine wants to double up his rooks on the 7th rank, king h7, now comes rook c7, rook g8, and knight d7. Now can you understand the idea of playing h5? In this case there are no king g6 moves and black is actually in trouble. Right now the threat is knight f6 check. King h8, black is like acting against white's knight f6 move, but now you can pause the video and try to find Alekhine's next move. Ready? Well, though after knight f6 already there is no fork, but Alekhine went for the devastating move and attacked the defender. Here g takes f6 can't be played because of the simple checkmate. That's why after knight f6 black played rook f8, the desperate attempt after which Alekhine captured on g7 and sacrificed his knight. Rook takes f6, but now comes the king e5, the point of the combination. The black rook can neither retire nor can it be defended by the other rook without allowing a mate in 2 moves. But even after its capture by the white king, mate can only be delayed by desperate moves. For example, if a move like bishop d3, just a random move, then white can give a check from h7 and then from g7 and then can capture on f6, and there is this mating threat. There is no way out. That's why, understanding all that, after this king e5, Frederick Yates resigned. This was actually a very instructive game with a very precise piece play. Alekhine successfully demonstrated how to exploit the weaknesses in opponent's camp, and of course the final king walk was very fascinating. This is what you should do in the endgame: centralize your king, because in the endgame the king is the strongest attacking piece. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. For more games, consider subscribing to my channel. I will see you in the next video.